You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Because you can handle the truth.
We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Oh my, he just doesn't even know where to begin. This one, I guess, introduce myself. I'm Michael Storm. This is the show. It's Toward Anarchy. As always, here live every Sunday across the Republic Broadcasting Network, 1 to 3 p.m., in some sort of effort to make sense of the world that I live in a little bit. It's my release, my freedom. I get to come and talk about all these things that can otherwise eat you up inside, you know, the sort of abuses that the world deals out to us, and it's been a banner week for that, I tell you, not just for myself, but all of the world. And as always, we'll try to talk about some of it and try to make some little bit of sense of it in relation to our own individual understanding of the world and the way we think and feel that things should be, and what an insurmountable task it would be to try and really truly change the world, so that all we can do is change ourselves and be better people for ourselves and for those around us, and that's the best most of us have. That question came up again this week to me. You know, what have you done to help the world? And it's always put that way too. It's always help the world, and I'll tell you what I did to help the world this week. Nothing. I left it the hell alone. The world is not my problem. Part of the reason that the world has a whole bunch of problems is because of people thinking that they can solve the world's problems, that they can use the force of government or any of these manipulations that we often talk about on the show, the economics, the different control mechanisms that they use, the media, the entertainment across the board, the constant attack on trying to improve something that you just can't necessarily improve on. It's hard to suggest that you can't improve on the human condition when people see around them things getting better all the time, when you can look at the world and see, as we did this week, numbers sort of showing that the middle class across the world has tripled in the last decade or so, a couple decades. I don't remember exactly what the number was. It was just something that it's one of these things. It just so much information, bam, 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 bam. But the gist of it is that across the world, the middle class has risen, and so everybody everywhere is seeing a general improvement in life. But the condition of man, it doesn't really change. We're born. We have X amount of time to be here, and then we die. That's it. There's been nobody that has accomplished anything but that. And there's been some claims of some people that have been able to surpass that, but there's not a ton of evidence to suggest that any of us is getting out of this thing alive. And the idea that one person or a group of people can purposely manipulate, and I have to use the word manipulate because that's how I'm trying to clarify is sort of a natural change and growth that any society should experience from that manipulated one trying to force us to move in a direction as opposed to us just going the way we go. It's like being water, the Bruce Lee thing, be water, flow. That's what life does. It goes where it goes, and the walls that it runs up against are either real ones, death, meeting that lion, or they're manipulated ones. There's a whole bunch of versions of the manipulated ones. There's self-manipulated ones, there's externally manipulated ones, and everything sort of in between those as well. And it's the external ones that are the problem for me. It's I don't have a problem with life, with getting along through life and dealing with the ups and downs and that come with the things that I choose to do myself. I have a bigger problem getting through life when somebody tries to force an idea on me or to tell me that I have to do things their way. It's not even a case of trying to show me a better way. I respect that. I get that. I look for that. I watch that in people. But trying to force us to move in a direction. It's a physics thing, right? It's the Star Wars thing. I've said it so many times about this. The more you tighten your grip, the more star systems will slip through your fingers, is the quote from Star Wars. You understand what I'm saying is that the more pressure that is applied in all these areas, the more there's a natural pushback. And here's a good example of it. This was something that I saw through the week. And this is something I want to convince you to let this go, because I get that you might be one of the people who's bent up about this. But okay, so you know who Craig Telfer is? I don't either. In 2016, Craig Telfer is ranked 200th in his event. Running, I don't know if it involved hurdles or not. At any rate, in 2016, Craig Telfer, this runner I've never heard of, this athlete that I've never heard of, is ranked 200th in his sport. And in 2017, Craig Telfer is ranked 390th in his sport. And then in 2018, Craig Telfer transitions to female. In 2019, CC Telfer is national champion. And so this is 2 years old already, and this is part of what I want to get across to you. You see what happened there. There's an argument that because he competed against real females, that was his advantage. That's why he won, and that may be true. Here's what I want you to take away from this. This is old and still going around. It's still people making the same argument. It's done. It's over with. There's nothing you could do about it. I mean, maybe I guess you could petition some board or something like that. I don't know if this was the Olympics or whatever it is. Probably, I don't know. I don't do sports, and so when I see these things, they're really unimportant to me, except for what I'm trying to use out of what is being provided. I care about the sport. I want you to get this idea. Let it go. Unless you happen to be the one, or it's your daughter or son happens to be competing against somebody like this, then all right, fine. Then you have a dog in the fight. Bark. But for the rest of this, who cares? It's not your problem. And here's what really needs to happen with this. They need to just stop setting gender requirements for sports. Sports requirements should be more about simply the athletic skill, the ability to do it, whether they make the team or not. And I know that's always going to that leads to trying to balance with fairness and we got to have a certain amount of number of these type of people over here and these type of people over here, whether they're female or of a color or something like this. It starts throwing things out of whack. Look, these are the criteria for sports. Equally competitive skill and equally competitive weight. That's it. That should be it. It shouldn't really matter male or female. If women and men want to compete against each other, or if one or the other wants to get up there and, I hate to say pretend, but let's face it, I mean, they're not really men or women, and I don't care that it's your choice. But in this, it all ties together about things being forced. It's often this sort of thing right here, and it's from both sides. Something like this, where we have to be forced to accept it instead of it just being a thing where these people are just make their own choice to compete or not, to be a male or a female or not. Why is it anybody else's business? Why is this what's important? Why is this what gets a headline when there are criminal gangs roaming our streets, robbing, caging, and murdering people, and they have a legal right to do it, and they do it every single day in this nation, all across the nation, in every city, in every county, in every state. Some criminal, authoritarian with a badge and the idea that he has a legal right to accost other people based on political opinion. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's happening every single day, and it happened this week to a friend of mine. You may have heard the story. Arvada, Colorado. My friend Johnny stopped a man who was about to go on a rampage, and the cops killed him. He'd stopped the violence. It was already over. And some C student with a badge and a hard-on and just trigger happy came in and killed my friend. He was a guest on this show. If you've been listening to this show, you may remember. He was a good man. He didn't deserve it. It's hard. I'm trying to breathe. It's been tough. I don't process things like most people do, so I went from sort of skipping through the processes, sort of denial straight to acceptance, because I mean, there it is. His sister is the one who told me. I don't think there's any question that it didn't happen. And of course, I knew the second that that something had happened. I knew that a cop had killed him, and so you go and you look at this story, and they're saying they won't say who shot who, so that's exactly what happened. And so I skipped through that process, that normal process that most people go through, and bounced right back to anger. And so now talking about it is pretty tough. I'm going to have to get away from it so that we can get on with the show. Have to deal with it, as anyone does. Go to towardanarchy.com and look for today's date. It's June 27th. If you're not with me live, If it's not just right there on the front page, look through the archive, click the archive button. June 2021, 27th is the date. And if you slowly find, I just walked through the process as we did that so that I'm trying to distance myself from thoughts. Dr. Dean Lloyd is going to be my guest in just about 15 minutes. He'll join us at the regular time. He is going to have a conversation with us about healing arts and social application. So we'll find out exactly what those mean. I mean, the words themselves speak a lot, but what are they in practice? It's something that I've tried to include a lot more of. What is that real world and application, that recognizable result of doing these things, of practicing healing arts, of practicing social application? What are the results? Well, they're evolving the species, or at least that's what Dr. Lloyd would tell us. That's his website, evolvingthespecies.com. Him and his partner, we'll talk more about them. I want to get through some of these things because there's wonderful stuff that I had to share with you, and we have a whole hour with Dr. Lloyd to talk about evolving the species, and oftentimes I will forget to just hit these things. And one that I've shared something like this before. I love these. They're about perspective, and a lot of my worldview is perspective. When you see cops on the street, I just sort of see gang members. When you see a group of politicians together, I see a group of gangsters together. When you see people exercising their right to vote, showing up at the polls, I see a mob with torches and pitchforks trying to force other people what to do. So it's all about perception. And I've shared a number of these images over the course of the years of the show, and this here is one of my favorites. So if you go to towardanarchy.com, you look for June 27th, and you scroll down the page to the meme that I share every week. This one's great. It's on a corner. It's an art project by Jasmine K.U., and it plays out like this. So it's a corner, so you can see one side or the other, or if you stand at the corner, you can see both sides. And depending on what you're looking at, you get a different story. So if you're looking at it from one side, art is pointless. You have to go out, get an actual job, and make a living. You can't just let the rest of your life be a joke, a failure. You will end up a starving artist, contribute to society. Instead of wasting time, you're worthless. But if you look at it from a different angle, if you take a different perspective, art is pointless without passion. You have to go out and create art. Get an actual job doing what you love and make a living by being yourself. You can't just let other people define the rest of your life and say you will be a joke, a failure. You follow your heart, you will end up happy and free, not a starving artist. Love your art and contribute to society by inspiring people instead of wasting time letting others tell you you're worthless. You can change the world. It's all about that simple perspective. And I just love that image. And at a time like this, you want perspective. You want perspective of the world, and you want to and a time like this is something that's in everybody's life. Of course, I'm speaking about myself, but I'm also speaking generally about the world, about our state, and about this human condition that I mentioned before. Our reality is so very simple, and there's so much and so little that we can do as individuals and in and of ourselves. And the odds of really truly influencing the world and changing it are slim. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but I think that a lot of people set their goals a little bit too high instead of just being themselves and changing the world around them with the things and doing the things that they love. We'll come back. All right, towardanarchy.com. As always, that is the way to follow along. Just look for June 27th. You'll see that Dr. Dean Lloyd He'll be my guest here in just a few minutes. We'll add him to the conversation. Producer Sam will get him on the phone and do his magic on his end that somehow manages to connect us together, and we have these wonderful conversations that we have every week. And I just appreciate the fact that you come here and do it. And there's always just so much to talk about. There's always so many things that I could hit on, and I always want to, and so I try to jot a little thing here and there down or capture a screen, on my phone or even on my computer, just whatever it is. And of course this week, the UFO report, the preliminary assessment on unexplained aerial phenomena, that was released on Friday. And there's two versions of it. There's the version they gave us, and then there's the version that they're not letting us see. So who knows what that says? The preliminary report really didn't say anything. It's not. I don't think there was anything in it. I mean, I didn't read it. I just read a synopsis of it, but it didn't sound like there was anything in it that anybody didn't already know. Certain encounters and things like that, but it's the same old story. They don't know what it is. They won't speculate what it is, at least not to us. They will behind closed doors, is what I'm trying to say. And so we're just still out here, just dangling the hook in front of you on the whole topic of unexplained aerial phenomena, UFOs, aliens, this so-called disclosure that I've been following it for a while because it was all over the news and the internet, and just everywhere I turned there was a headline or some mention about this disclosure. So I was thinking maybe are they going to put, they've pushed every other button that has been talked about, that's been produced into some sort of story or movie of a dystopian future. They pushed all of those buttons, the COVID button, the terrorism button, the drugs that are just destroying society button. Everything that they can do to instill fear within people and use as a mechanism for control, it has been used. And so they're having to reach out to the stars, I guess, to move into the next level of fear, because that's been one of the things that has been expected to be used for a long time, is sort of alien invasion as the technology gets better to fool people. And it's definitely at that. The ability to fake stuff, to make fake images, these deep fakes, and to draw non-real but realistic looking things into real situations is unsurpassed at this point. It's not like, there's a lot of people they use CGI to land on the moon. Do you know what CGI looked like when they landed on the moon? I don't want to get into the argument. It's one of those ones that I won't even take up with people. If you don't think people landed on the moon, fine. It's fine. I don't care. I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm not going to say one way or another. I don't think it's impossible. I don't think there's anything that keeps us from doing it, even on crazy new technology at the time. Given what we have now, and maybe that's based on the aliens. Maybe that technology, there's a reason why we can get to the moon, because it's our technology, our understanding of what we have now is based on alien technology. I don't know. Maybe Dr. Joy knows. The next time we have her back on, we'll have to ask her about her impression of all of this now that it's out, since she was on the show before all of this came out, before this release, and I'm sure she's read it from cover to cover. It's something that I guarantee that she is interested in and wants to know what they are and aren't saying. And I would almost bet that she's going to tell you the same thing I, that it just doesn't really tell him anything, that there's not anything new in this information. That's been my understanding of anyone else's impression of it so far. And of course, then again, there's the fact that there's a version we're not seeing. Dr. Dean Lloyd is my guest. We're going to have a conversation about healing arts and social application. We'll talk about evolving the species when we get back here on Toward Anarchy.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
All right, as always, you want to follow along with these things. The best way to do that, towardanarchy.com. I always create a page every week on the show that has some information in it. It's not just my rantings. It's things that I come across and I think that I find that are going to be useful, but it's also information about my guest, usually at least a link to their website and a way for you to find out more about them, because we only have just an hour of time to even scratch the surface. So there's a million things that we can talk about, and through the course of a 2-hour show and a 1-hour guest appearance, we will talk about 0% of them, or approximately 0% of them. So we will get in what we can. The rest is up to you, a little bit of homework, if you will. Towardanarchy.com. Go to June 27th, and you see Dr. Dean Lloyd is my guest. We're going to talk about healing arts and social application, and what he's doing, evolving the species, along with his partner Am Rosen, and the work that they're doing at evolvingthespecies.com. That's a website there that I've shared for you. The link is there, and you can scroll and you can find out more about what we're talking about. You can connect with Dr. Dean or Am and follow up on the things that we talk about and the things that we hit on, because that's all we'll be able to do in this conversation. Is all we're ever able to do is just sort of scratch the surface. But I love scratching the surface, and I love it when it turns out like this, because Dr. Dean reached out to me and said, hey, I'd like to come on the show and talk to you. I heard an episode of the show. I liked what I heard. I liked the way you approach things. I think this will work. And wow, looking over the website, evolvingthespecies.com, and just sort of looking at who Dr. Lloyd and Am Rosen are, and the things that they're doing and what they understand about the world. I'm wow, this is amazing. Yeah, I have to do this. I have to have Dr. Lloyd on and talk to him about what it is they're doing, because it's right up my alley. Listen to this. So this would be one of the first things I read after I'm contacted here. Is Dr. Dean Lloyd. Dean is a lifelong professional musician. All right, I'm sold. We're good. He's got to be a guest. You know me and music. But you follow through. He's a student of Oriental medicine. He's a board-certified acupuncturist. He's a naturopath. He hosts his own radio show. He's an author. He's a professor. He teaches accutone to acupuncturists. And this is a word I know. My wife she worked at an association for years that supported people who were in acupuncture and in physical therapy in different ways, including stones and cups and all sorts of different methods of physical manipulation, and so I'm familiar with and wow, okay, yeah, let's have this conversation. Let's talk about these things. So it's a real pleasure to bring to you Dr. Dean Lloyd. Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Lloyd.
Hi, Michael. How's my audio?
Oh, you sound great.
Perfect. It's a tribute to those low-tech landlines.
I love it. And you know what? One of the things that won't happen is we won't get that duplexing that happens when multiple people are talking over Skype. And boy, that's just wonderful when it comes to the sound. Boy, it's great trying to talk over. But no, we won't have that problem, so it's great. I'm glad you're able to do that. Not everybody still has a landline or access to one, I guess.
No, thank you. I do make it a point as much as I can to use the landline as much as I am able. The cell phone as limited as possible.
Well, your audio just sounds great, so I don't mean to harp on it. You just do sound good, and you can tell it's because of that good, solid connection. Boy, cell phones just don't get them, and everybody's got a cell phone. Everybody has their little government tracking device in their pocket these days, and it's just so easy to pull it out and use it as the first method of communication, and it's not always the best.
Yeah, there you go. But our communication, as you point out, is an extremely distorted thing at this particular time in our development. Mm. And I noticed when I was turning on for your show before I got on that you had a traumatic situation with a friend of yours, and I wanted to point out to you that you cannot make physical changes in the body without making emotional releases. So it's honoring that part of our body, which is our feelings, that we have not been able to integrate into medicine, into healing, until now. And I want to point that out because what we're trying to do in medicine is try to come up with the greatest new technology. We're going to find the answer with science. But science has too often become scientific reductionism. And we're not proceeding with what we really understand as the human condition, being an integrated mind-body being. And that means that we understand feelings. This is a missing piece. We're very objective. We're brilliant in terms of our looking at tests and determining, with high technology, some, for example, blasting the calcium oxalates in the kidney stone. That's a good technology to have if you can, that, or something that's as advanced as an MRI, which is really an X-ray of sorts that has multiple X-rays, and you can see different heat associations. In other words, the discoloration of one area will indicate an illness or a blockage. And when I heard you grieving, I wanted to point it out that is our natural process. We first must understand that feelings are not rational, logical, and they don't make sense. They are being, they're part of our natural mechanism of response. Our organic feelings are being suppressed with drugs, with Wi-Fi, with pollutants, and so forth. And it is my intention to bring the tools that we've never had in medicine and throughout the world, that's my wish, to give new tools as a new paradigm shift to the medical community and the rest of the world so that we understand what we've been leaving out. And this is a very big topic, and your expertise is in what I would consider in the same category of social application. And that gives me an opportunity to first launch off into that topic. But first I thought I might give a little background because here I am speaking to you, and I'm already saying things that might be deemed as being audacious.
Indeed. So please, yes, do.
Okay, so I was on with Dr. Lorraine Hurley on her show on Genesis Communications Network years ago. Yes. And we were the show before Alex Jones.
Right.
I don't have to go into Alex Jones first. But we were on before him and then later after. And it turned out at that time, this is going back 12, 13, 14 years ago, when the radio shows were starting to cover a lot of health-related issues. And it actually surpassed geopolitics at some point. And we were number 2 in terms of ratings, and the name of the show was called Uncommon Awareness. So what we did is we talked about anything from what goes on with the vaccines, what goes on with detoxification, and most importantly, and my niche, if I may say so, is consciousness. And with that, I had to, through all my multidisciplined approaches, decide how to facilitate all this wonderful knowledge that I have in background of Oriental medicine and naturopathy, homeopathy, my book and my work in Accutone, which is a very interesting work unto itself because it identifies the frequencies and the levels of tissue in these meridians, and by doing that matching, we're able to direct energy in a very unique way. So my approaches have to, first of all, come from the place of the technique is not running us. We are running the technique. In other words, the method that you're using is only as good, provided that it's a valid one, only as good as the consciousness that's using it.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
Absolutely.
And I love questions, Michael. So anytime you
No. If I have one, I will definitely jump in. You bet.
Okay. So with that little brief introduction, I just wanted to point out that I've been through some of the most difficult medical experiences you could imagine. And one of them was with Dr. Hurley. Another one was with my fight with ozone. And that I was one of the practitioners on staff in a clinic in Wisconsin years and years ago that actually went to the Supreme Court when we were doing ozone therapy. And it was being used.
Wow.
Yes. And we were using it under the training and advisement of Dr. Rathna Alwa, who was brilliant. And she took her work from Cook County Hospital in Chicago up to Wisconsin because she wasn't allowed to do it in Cook County.
Right.
So she said, enough of this. And in her very beautiful English with the Indian accent, was, then I am going to leave. and I'm going to make my own practice, and I'm going to make it work. And she did. And she was in her 80s.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Yeah, no, that's a really common thing, actually. People like her are some of the most amazing people. They're in the system, they're there, and they see how dysfunctional it is, and they just step out on their own. They take the chances. They fight the powers that be to bring about these new, or in a lot of cases, they're not even new ideas. They're just ideas that are not accepted within the medical community.
Well, this is part of the consciousness shift that I'm wanting to bring forth with my colleague, Am Rosen. And I'll tell you a little bit about him shortly, but I just thought I'd finish up with Dr. Lorraine Hurley first in our show. You probably remember some years back, 8, 9, 10 years ago, that there was a slew of deaths that were doctors that had died from unknown, and they unknown background, they just mysterious deaths, and they were related to all of them, almost all of them, in cancer treatments that were efficacious. They were very effective, and here were these doctors that were dying. Some in Florida. This was around the time at the tail end when Dr. Hurley met her demise. It was a sad, very, very sad and tragic story. But she was hit on her bicycle by a truck, and I was in a lot of grief, like you, over your friend that didn't deserve this. And she was my partner in this Evolving the Species project with Mr. Rosen.
Oh.
So I had been doing ozone therapy, took it to the Supreme Court, and we were cease and desist, so I had to leave that. Then, more recently, I had my partner with Dr. Lorraine Hurley, and she had made marked improvements in the education process to the public with her background and reaching out, and she was killed. And now I have the situation where I have the Evolving the Species project, and my colleague, Am Rosen, who is a genius, and his work will be presented on the Evolving the Species website by the end of the year in PDF format and also in audible format. Nature of Consciousness, Cruising the Epiphany Highway, just to name a couple of his books, will be available all on this website. And it is my duty to make this information available. If you have seen the website, then you know we're talking about things that are absolutely timely for human development at this time.
No, I agree. This is why I wanted to have this conversation and talk about this, because I believe that this is what's missing. I've had the other doctors on in terms of the physical doctors, the guys who are repairing things that are working on the other end of freeing the medical system from the tyranny of insurance companies and the leverage that they hold over people and the types of treatments and the availability and the openness of cost and things like that. So
it's true that it's being run by businessmen, and that's not a medical model. It's not a healing model.
Not
so
really,
I've even decided to detach myself from the term doctor to healer. Again.
Oh, fair enough.
Healer and facilitator. And
I love that.
Because the doctors that are using their title, like Dr. Fauci, for example, this is not a doctor.
Right.
That the word is being used, just like the word vaccine. It's not a vaccine. And so if you want to get into it, we can, but I prefer going beyond that, because it's what we are talking about here is literally a gold mine of psychological foundation that changes the paradigm to the point of redirecting, and I do mean this, everything that we've perceived. Allopathic medicine is good for emergencies, but who wants to live their life in an emergency all the time?
Well, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who thrive on it, I've found over the years and years. But yes, your general point is understood.
and because of that, what is available to them is that the people, and this is not a criticism to the medical profession entirely, it's just that they've been indoctrinated in a kind of medical religion of sorts, that everything is physical. It comes down to physical, we got to look at the next blood type, we got to look at, your lymphocytes, and we have to look at RBCs and all these kinds of things.
Hold that thought. We're running up against the break here. We'll be right back, and we'll finish this part of the conversation here with Dr. Lloyd. We'll be right back on Toward Anarchy. It's so great when they already know what they're getting into, because then you don't have to have the superfluous conversations. You can continue on with the more important points. And before we were so rudely interrupted by trying to pay the bills there, healer, facilitator, he's a real doctor if authority is a thing that appeals to you. Dean Lloyd we were just hitting on the notion that, of course, the doctors, the medical profession is compromised and really aiming in the wrong direction, but specifically the point that they believe that healing is purely physical.
Right, and thank you for that launch. What I wanted to just point out in looking at these drugs that are being used to save lives, but they're being used with the idea that people become dependent on them, therefore make more money. And they could be intelligently designed so that doesn't become the case. And with all the brilliance behind medicine, what I want to do is upgrade the mindset so that it is accessible to any field of medicine. I don't care if it's in psychology, neurology, osteopathy, whatever field, what I am offering can be used and should be used in every field of medicine. And I mean that it can be applied in all people. So in looking at the social application direction, which is consideration 5 in the 5 that are on the website, I thought I'd offer you with this short segment something that Dr. Rosen and I came up with, and it would just be a short read, but it would launch us into the next segment.
Please.
If that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So first, let's consider the situation of our all-too-human predicament. Despite our breakthrough discoveries and technological innovations, regardless of our high-minded moralities and logically reasoned possibilities, out of balance, human existence continues to precariously seesaw between civilized fulfillment and apocalyptic mass annihilation. Ah, yes, the endless battle for inner security, or at least a good self-justifying excuse for why it's not your fault that you've never been able to truly feel safe, at ease, and flexibly in control of your inner mindscape. Why, against our reason, desire, and better judgment, do we keep trashing ourselves while trying to keep on one-upping each other? Rationalize it any way you can, still regardless of good intentions and or charismatically showy persuasiveness. You can do any more for someone else than you've done for yourself, right?
Right.
Okay. And obviously what someone can do to their self, if you let them, they'll just might do that to you. All of which continues to set the stage for the wishful thinker's heroic quest for repentance, redemption, liberation, salvation, or whatever gets wrapped up in that legendary elusiveness for an actual working solution to end human suffering and misery. It is time to stop fighting, to get away from the negative. In trying to get away from what you're afraid may do you harm. You inadvertently wind up fixating upon the very thing you don't want. Actually, there's nothing negative that you need to battle. Rather, you're either going where you want, whatever the consideration, this movement is always towards a more expansive, inclusively integrated, dynamically creative state of mind and access, or you're getting rid of whatever is impeding your progress. How could this be of value and service to you? We intend to facilitate you becoming better consumers. We are consuming things all the time. On a basic survival level, we consume oxygen, water, food, nutrition, and, at the least, substance of shelter. According to our dispositions, inclinations, and circumstantial availability, our ever-growing appetites seek to consume all kinds of goods and services. However, what we consume the most of are ideas. Religious ideas, political ideas, economic ideas, public health ideas, romantic ideas, self-worth ideas, along with the supposed good and bad, right and wrong of every culturally advertised mode of conduct to which you can be persuaded to commit your purchasing dollars. Realize, no system, methodology, and or technique can function any better than the quality of the intelligence that uses it. That system may be the health of your own body-mind complex, or it may be the interacted health of the body politic of global humanity. We intend to further empower you, thereby helping facilitate your inner security, so that as consumers, you will no longer be susceptible to being emotionally bullied and psychologically browbeaten. So you can demand the kinds of goods and services at every level that will actually satisfy you. Then those persons who really have the creative intelligence and workplace moxie will be able to make their fortunes by satisfying real needs, while those who can only use the momentum of their accumulated power to market alibis for the public's denied fears and inadequacy will fall by the wayside.
That's really great. It's the more eloquent version of really what I was talking about earlier at the beginning of the show. It's the deeper understanding of what I was scratching at the surface of. It's amazing how that always tends to be the case around here, and I believe it's about intent. I believe it's about being a little bit closer to attached body and mind and spirit, if you will. And working towards this common awareness that allows it to happen. It's a stream of consciousness that flows through the show and everything that we do that I'm just in love with.
Well, I love that because, remember, we have within us tools that have been corrupted. That we were told to take our power and give it away. Right. And that is not what we are doing as what I call new doctor. All right, the new doctor is going to see the patient, make changes according to their needs. This is individualized medicine, right? But to do so, see, we're into this herd mentality, right? We gotta fix everybody with the latest and greatest antidepressant or the latest and greatest antibiotic, which anything and everything has their place. I have real problems with addictive, toxic drugs, okay? And this doesn't need to be. Some of them can be used short-term. Some of them can be used, for saving lives and all this. But what I'm talking about is consciousness. What I want to do is make a significant difference and upgrade in the way that we perceive medicine, because as you already know now, it's become runaway greed. Right. It's not about medicine anymore. And so I've provided the tools, and my website gives you the launching pad for that. And the doctors that I'm going to be speaking with and other practitioners, we will be covering all 5 of these topics that are on the website, including social application.
Tell me a little bit about social application. How does it work? What does it mean? I mean, you can look up a definition, but that's not the same thing as sort of realized, real world expectation of that application, as it were.
Okay, and one of the ways of, first of all, understanding anything is to intellectually, to formulate. Remember, intellect is not intelligence. Intellect is that which we form in the symbol. Okay, that what is formed into symbols is intellect. Intelligence is not intellect. There are a lot of intellectual people that I would call overeducated idiots. Because they again revert back to primitive emotional patterns and justify their actions, which are destructive very often. And this is what I want to break the pattern for. And social applications, I could say it briefly, is making us better consumers, deciding what we want and what is really applicable in our needs at this time of our development. It's so important. It's the important. I hear people saying the most important thing right now is the cryptocurrency, or the most important thing is quelling the emergence of short resources,
sure.
The reduction of resources, water and food, and absolutely important. Nuclear, power plants leaking radiation, absolutely important. What I'm talking about is nothing will change until we change where the mind is going. Because everything in your life, whatever you're experiencing, is determined by the state of mind you're in when you're experiencing.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about here.
Yeah. Well, that's something that a lot of people in the drug culture will understand. The mood that you're in is affected by the things that you do, and vice versa. So social application, you could kind of look at it as the consumer end of conscious capitalism, or whatever it is the new capitalists are trying to sell us, as far as their sort of conscious awareness of what it is their business and the things that they're providing, the services they're providing, are doing in terms of damage to, at least to the environment. I don't think they're necessarily. Maybe slowly they're becoming aware of their effect on people, as opposed to just the places, with the products and things that they use, not just the places that they create them, and the resources that they use up, and the waste that they create.
Well, that's in our psyche, we have what I call a built-in sabotage mechanism.
Mm.
And I can get to that. But I first have to identify, why is this being done in the first place? It's because money has become the most important thing. And the collateral damage is secondary. And what is the collateral damage? The environment, people. Everything that's associated with our livelihood is secondary. So when that becomes the most important direction, we have to understand, I have to ask the question, as a healer, I have to say, what is it that predisposed you or caused you to be susceptible to that condition that makes it so that you've ignored everything else, or you put it as a second when it's primary? You cannot live in your own waste. And we are providing so little in terms of useful information that breaks us out of these patterns. And that's what I'm here to do. I've been able to, and this is with my work with my dear friend Dr. Rosen, who I will talk about in another show, but he has, with my involvement, been able to put together something that's lasted, it's taken over 30 years for us to put this together. Call that dedication.
Yeah.
A long time. And I've known the man.
That's a long time.
That's a long time, and I've known the man going on 40 years, and he has been so brilliant in his approach, and that's what I'm so excited to do, is now, finally, give the public what work is. It is the answers that people have been asking for so long, or haven't been able to come up with the questions to articulate what it is that's bothering them. Now, I'd like to take the example of grief, something that both you and I have experienced. You more recently, I mentioned Dr. Hurley's passing is a very grieving experience for me, and your friend passing is a grieving experience. We can identify these emotional places in the body. In Chinese medicine, we label grief as most connected to the lungs. Anger, yes, the lungs.
You can feel it. Well, you can tell. What happened earlier in the show was a perfect example. I could hardly breathe, hardly speak.
Right, and it's directly tied to our nervous system. Now, what we are experiencing with anger is we don't know how we feel. And that's most closely linked to the liver.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Anger is a very, very prevalent emotion, negative, draining emotion in our culture today. And it's really a defended misunderstanding. If you don't know what you're feeling, then you're defending what you don't understand. Let that sink in a moment.
No, I am.
Okay. Fear, all fear, is not understanding. So here you have emotions that are very closely linked, expressed in different ways. And by the way, fear is most closely linked to the organ of the kidney in Chinese medicine. Okay. You know, I was so scared I peed my pants. You know, that kind of thing. Okay. So what I can do is break this down and explain it and how it works and how we can apply this to be better consumers. You have a particularly unique insight in that you're saying, let's look at the bigger picture, everyone. The system, as it is not working. Well, why isn't it working? We've got what we would appear to have a solid foundation. What's been done? It's pretty simple. You know, it's been corrupted over the years, and the people that are in charge don't know what they're doing. They don't understand the psychology of themselves. Ego is the driving force. And when your self-image, I'm rephrasing the ego as self-image, when your self-image says that I am the money that I'm making, then that becomes the most important thing you do. And however you attain power is justified. The feelings can justify anything.
Wow.
That's your program.
Well, and for the average person who isn't necessarily sort of using their power to control or abuse other people, the money, they become their job, their profession, that becomes their realities, and that's just another substitute for the money because that's what gets them the money.
Yeah, but they don't understand that they're not satisfied.
Right. Absolutely.
This is not answering to their needs. What if they were being honest with themselves? They would say, "I'm not doing something that's working." And to be excruciatingly honest takes a tremendous, and I will say this, it takes a lot of focus and concentration, a lot of your own will to not get sucked in by all the mechanisms of destruction, because we are so immersed. It'd be really nice to turn on a radio show that would give us solutions, would you not think? And I'm hearing a lot of complaining, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I do feel like there's some really good information being put out there. It's just I want them to have a place to go.
That's right. Because speaking of activism and thinking of my friend, and thinking in terms of activism, because that's how we met each other and know each other is through activism, and what we realized is that there was a ton of value in activism, but there was much more value in the community of activists created.
Yeah, and part of your job, of course, is to sort it out, and that's I admire people who take on this challenge. Doctors are doing some very noble, honorable things, putting themselves at risk with this vaccine confusion, I'll call it, because it really is a mislabeled and non-clearly understood effect on the body. I'm going to, like I said, divert my attention away from that topic right now.
No, that's
because
that's
I've got
fine. You're talking. You're preaching to the choir anyway. So
yeah. So, but what excites me, and I think that people, once they hear that there is these tools available to them, that I can help them. First of all, I know how the mind works. That's an enormous statement unto itself. How can you say that you know how the mind works? You know, but here I am speaking to you from so many years. I started at age 11 when I had a family tragedy, and it caused me to say that the people shouldn't be doing this. They're destructive, and I made it my vow that I would find out what it was that was causing the human condition so much suffering. And I would have to say, with Dr. Rosen's help, I was able to achieve that goal. And I don't...
That was a great spot to hold that thought. We got to go into a break. We'll be right
okay.
back. Healer and facilitator Dean Lloyd has been my guest, and unfortunately, as always, we're up against the clock and running out of time, and as it happens. But I just love the word facilitator because I kind of think of myself in terms of that. I find myself in a position where I'm just trying to kind of help people understand why it is I think I understand myself and my world a little bit better, and it's all I kind of am able to do is just be who I am and tell other people who I am and about my world and the way I see things, and it's so great to be able to bring someone such as yourself on here who has a whole other level of understanding of this same general principle I'm trying to get across. You take it to a whole new level, and I just really appreciate everything that we've discussed here today, and I do hope that you will be able to come back again sometime. We'll pick up the conversation and maybe talk some more about AM and any of these other things. You know the clock, obviously. There's just a couple of minutes left. Hit on anything that you feel that we didn't get to yet, or just any last final thoughts that you want to leave us with.
Okay, first to your point about coming back on, yes.
Yeah.
Next month I will, if we can make the time, and I would like to do that. I'll come in part 2 of Evolving the Species. I'll be happy to
that would be lovely.
Be here for you on that. And
thank you.
I did want to point out that this sabotage mechanism, I didn't want to leave it alone.
Okay, all right.
Just because most people have in their mind that you really have to suffer. I want to provide the tools that break that pattern. Okay. And I can do that.
It's a cultural thing, even as Americans.
Yes, it is. But it's culturally brought up that you can do what you want in life, just don't, enjoy it.
Yeah, it's got to be hard work. It can't be easy, or it isn't worth it. There's so many little cliches like that make it like we're supposed to, that indicate that we're supposed to suffer for it. Yeah.
Okay, so on that, I will give you the website as evolvingthespecies.com, and you'll see the little write-up on myself and Dr. Rosen. And I will also suggest to your listeners that they get the free ebook. Okay? It's free. You just download it, and then you'll see what we're talking about. And if this excites you, like it does me, finding the answers to what plagues the human condition, what is causing this suffering, has been motivating me since 11 years old. I've got a lot of experience in this. So I suggest that they get that ebook, read it, and you do have an email to ask questions, and I love questions.
That's awesome. And there's free, easy sign up. You just throw an email and a password up there. You don't have to
just the ebook.
You can watch some videos, and it's evolvingthespecies.com, and of course I'll continue talking. You bet. We'll set up a time here coming up next few weeks, next month, whatever we have available, and we'll continue the conversation. I'd love to. It's great. It's been a fantastic experience meeting you.
Beautiful. Thank you. And just to say that I am putting together with the other colleagues of mine the podcasts, and when the website is up and going, it'll be a $14.95 monthly subscription, and that anybody can listen to any of our podcasts on any of those topics at any time. So it's going to be, I feel, one of the most revolutionary websites for the human condition there is.
Well, and let me put it out as an example to people who listen to the show as someone who has successfully placed a valuation on the work that they create, and it's hard for sometimes intellectuals and artists to do that, put a price on what it is they do. Well, do it, make it valuable, make it worth your time, and be successful at it, and prove your value by putting out the quality of work that people expect.
Excellent, and we're expecting it to be done by the end of the year.
That's
There's
awesome.
been a lot more involved with putting it together, but the free ebooks there, the videos are there. The launch date will be put up as soon as it's known. Hopefully, it'll be between September and December of this year.
That's awesome. Well, I wish you the best of luck, and we'll stay in touch. And I'll reach out to you a little bit later when the archive is available and things like that. And we'll work on getting you set up for the next appearance. And we'll definitely keep in touch. And I'm going to follow along. I signed up, so I can't wait to see how it really comes about. I mean, I'm excited about the future of all of this, of our understanding of ourselves and our future society. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you, Dr. Lloyd.
Yes, Michael. And I appreciate you as well. Take care now.
All right. We'll talk to you again soon, and I will be back. Oh, my. That's what a fantastic conversation, right? My head is swollen. It feels big, filled with like a sponge sopping up the knowledge. And it was just fantastic. Super excited about it. It's just really great. The whole notion of doing this show, and he even brought it up himself. He talked about radio shows and conversations, and people. It'd be nice to hear somebody talking about solutions, and that's been my thing since day one. When I turned on the microphone, and on the other end of it it might have been producer Sam at the time. It was quite a few years ago, but from that day one, the idea was something solutions based. That it wasn't going to be about trying to put headlines out there, or go analyze the news or anything. Not in any greater sense than the personal impact that it has on myself, and that's evolved quite a bit to get to this point. Reduced, over trying to find this information, these links, that whatever it is, to be able to share and just to try to cover everything, but then to be at this point where it's reduced to just having simple conversations, even if they're just with myself, as they sometimes are, but just these simple, non-confrontational conversations about what it is people are doing to make a difference in real positive terms. The way I see it, of course, it's always tinted with tinted with. That's a nice word, nicer word. It doesn't have quite the connotative meaning. Tinted with my filter. There you go. It's my filter. That's what it is to you. But realize that I do look at myself as a facilitator. That's why I like that word. It's one of my favorite words, facilitator. And I like people who consider themselves facilitators, because it tends to mean to me that they look at themselves as trying to be super objective about what it is they're doing. And I like to a fault. Almost, you can actually take it too far. I think skeptics and skepticism are important, but I think that you have to have some basis in reality. Not everything can be. It's so important as to need to be torn down into its. One of the things that I've seen skeptics try to debunk is something like chiropractic. They suggest that chiropractic has no health benefit to you. And as someone who has had chiropractic work done a couple of times, I'm not someone that visits all the time. I realize in my years that I should, and I think that what happens is people don't even realize how messed up they are. I've probably talked about this before. You just don't even realize how bad sitting at a desk is, or any repetitive task that you do, whether it's standing, sitting, using a computer, working on a car, cutting meat, whatever it is that you do that is anything close to repetitive motion has got you out of whack. I almost guarantee it, and you just don't even realize it, and you don't understand how much your body has to compensate for your being out of alignment in your spine and in your neck and in your hips in particular, because they carry the entire weight of the rest of your body. And oh my God, if I can understand that as just some guy, I don't even know how to get that point across anymore. I'm just a guy. I'm just a geek. I like to play video games. I grew up with the Atari and then the Nintendo, and I grew up with one parent and a mother who loved me and took care of me and did everything that she did, but was distracted by boyfriends and jobs and all the things that she thought she needed to provide, a home and all this and everything that comes with it. And that's not to say that I'm bitter or have any, because I'm not. I absolutely love my mother. I don't regret any of my childhood in any sense of the word. I think that every experience that I've had has been ultimately a positive one, because it's helped make me who I am today, and it makes me provide a certain level of clarity and to work as a facilitator for people. Having been able to say that I have experience in this sort of gutter without being gutter trash. I have this sort of experience of a broken home without it being just a nightmare of there was this I don't even know what it was, because my wife found it. Must have been HBO, and it's a documentary about one of the stars of Saturday Night Live, and it's just this nightmare of his mother hitting him in the friggin' stomach with the hammer and stabbing him, and just this nightmare, unbelievable, abusive. And she thought it was love, and it's just all these ridiculous things that go along with these painful stories, and how he goes around. I unfortunately, again, not a fanboy. I'm a bad fan. I apologize. I just don't always know who these people. You'd be surprised at how many I do, and by voice, because I'm a voice person. But some people like this, other people would look at him and go, well, that's that guy. And I mean, all right, yeah, you're absolutely right. That is that guy. I apologize. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I didn't see that movie. But at any rate, it was just, no. Wow. Oh my God, this poor son of a bitch. And I mean that in just, boy, every sense of the word. Nothing like that. I got a belt a couple of times in my life, and we can debate whether or not that was the proper thing to do. My understanding is, in my life, is I don't think it is. My mother was raised differently. Her parents were raised differently. It's not their fault. They weren't told. They weren't given good advice about things like that, and so some things were dealt with corporally instead of some other way, logically, but not often. It didn't build any particular resentment or anything like that. I mean, I don't know if you could say there's some psychological effect in there, but not necessarily, because I'm a guy. So I've grown up and I've separated. I still talk to my mother, and we're fine. I love my mother. We don't talk every day like some people do, but I don't think that that's necessarily a guy thing. That's what we do. We grow up and we move away, and we end up oftentimes with another female figure, a wife, a girlfriend, and their family becomes the attention. It's kind of supposed to work like that. It seems to be, from my own experience and just observation. But regardless, that's the position that I find myself in as a facilitator, having a very broad knowledge, a very broad experience, most people never get out of their own backyard. They never leave their space. I've been pew, 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 all over. I've seen some people and I've done some things and I've had a lot of fun, and I've done it on my own time and my own dime, at my own expense in every sense of the word. I'm not. I haven't used other people to pave the way for me or anything like that. I went out there and I did some fun things and tried to be who I was in every way, from education to my friendships to my interests in the things that I wanted to do. That's what I end up with the drum set over here in my studio that I haven't spoken of recently, but I'm excited about because I found out that you can get this a better brain for mine. It's a digital drum set, so I can get a better controller. The little brain, it's what it is. It's what makes all the sounds and does all the programming. But the one I have, the one that it comes with, because it's an entry-level set ultimately, it's just a step above, as I've talked about. But the little module, the brain module that comes with it, doesn't give you control over, for instance, individual drums, individual sounds. It gives me sets. I can control individual sets, but I can't control each of the sounds. Well, this other brain will allow me to control them, and I found one for $60. So, and I'll be able to sell the one I have for $35, wheeling and dealing all the time. That's me. It's paid off. It's paid off well. I may not be rich, but I have all the toys, boys and girls. I have a good life. It's it's what I was talking about earlier in the show. Just accepting. It's my own life is easy, even with the ups and downs and things like that. It's this conflict with the state and the interests of the manipulators, the people who are trying to change things. Is that Dr. Lloyd read that the whole stretch when I do the edit for the archive, I'll cut out that break in there so he just reads that bit nonstop. There might be some hiccup or something in there noticeable, but for most people it'll seem like it's just a one straight through read. But I'm excited because I ordered this brain for my drums, and along with it, the ability to program each of the drums individually. And it has more sets, and it has more memory. It has it's expanded in all the positive ways, including it'll add two more. It'll add another crash symbol, and it'll add another tom to it. So, which now I'm going to have to get a bigger frame. But what I'm finding out is that I still did this the right way, and it's me. It's the wheeling, dealing, and the shopping, and I offered a ridiculous offer on this thing and stole it for about 66% of its value, something like that. And so I'm finding out that the little upgrades are still keeping me under what you could get at the same price. That's the same configuration I'm talking about. Ultimately, in the end, here is closer to $600 than it is to the $200, and when it's all done, $350 that I will have invested in this one to have basically the same thing. So I'm excited about it. I'm happy. I've been playing it a lot. It's amazing. Anybody who's never played instruments and you think that you have to be a prodigy or something like that. No, you just have to put in the practice, and you have to want to play that instrument. If you've always wanted to play the guitar, pick up a guitar and play the guitar. Anybody can play. If your fingers functionally work to press the strings and you are physically capable of playing the guitar, and you are mentally capable of understanding the difference between noise and sound, which is, I grant you, a very, very thin line, particularly when you're talking about instrumentation or multiple instruments. You can play the guitar, and it's just another thing. Oh, please, I tell you, I'm just a normal person, but I play multiple instruments, and it's because I want to. It's because I was interested. When I was a child, my grandma took me to the symphony a lot, things like that, ballets, but the symphony was the biggest thing that we went to. A lot of them. Denver Symphony Orchestra. And it was always the brass. I always loved the brass and the trumpets. Trumpets always seemed to get these great parts. There were some others. French horns had some wonderful parts, but trumpets were better. And of course, trumpets also, there was jazz and some blues and some other places where you can play some trumpet, and so that attracted me. And so I was taught how to play the trumpet in school and played it through I played it through as long as I stayed in school, all the way up through 10th grade, and it was pretty good at that. But along the way, I learned to play the drums, and I've owned a set or two over the years, but nothing is sort of serious. I was really serious about having one now because the technology and the price point are at such a crossing point that it's, wow, okay, you can get a really awesome drum set. If you want to learn how to play the drums, anybody can do it if you are physically capable again. And you can do it for a couple $100 and you learn how to play. It's limiting in some ways. It doesn't have a physical set of like the pedals. They're not physically attached to the hi-hats, and the hi-hats themselves, there's only one. It just makes the sounds, and the pressing of the pedal that's not attached to them it simulates the opening and closing. But the problem is that there's no way, because there's not a physical clamshell of them touching. There's not the proper sensoring in there. You can't get it to do certain things that you can do with the physical item, and that's where you start seeing much more expensive drum sets. But anybody who wants to learn to play an instrument, just play. Whatever it is you want to play, just play. Go down in the basement, whatever you have to do to make yourself feel comfortable, so you don't feel like you're performing in front of somebody as you're trying to learn. But just go play. Anybody can do it. You really can. It's the child prodigies and stuff. They're not so much child prodigies as they are children, and they're like sponges, and their brains are open, and they're easy to, if you will, program, or to program themselves to learn to teach their brains to communicate better with their fingers and their hands and their arms and the things they record, that you use to play those. Oh man, we're already out of time. We'll come back and we'll wrap it up here on Toward Anarchy. So I spent more on a lawnmower than I spent to buy my core drum set, and the drum set is infinitely more useful even if you're a landscaper, infinitely more useful. The value of playing an instrument, the physical and mental connection that they make, especially one that's so physical, is invaluable to your being. When you do it, and when the reward, the feeling, the whole package of just playing an instrument, of just doing something like that, it's an accomplishment that when you understand it, when you look at it, and if you just want to look at it in sort of silly, sort of selfish terms, there's 8 billion people on the planet, and when I say I play the drums, I may not play the drums like Neil Peart, but I play the drums better than almost all the 8 billion other people on the planet. So there's a self-satisfaction to be gained from just that itself. But not, I'm being very facetious in that. And truly the value of it is in that mind and physical body connection through the act of playing the instrument itself, but the creation of music, the rhythmic patterns, all of these things are valuable to you physically, mentally, and are far more valuable than something that just cuts your lawn. And it cuts grass. Grass is stupid. It's, and maybe golf course or a football field, and some might argue that golf courses and football fields are stupid, which I'm not one to do that. I like to play golf. I've done it a few times, and you know how much I love football. But I think, some could still argue that grass all across the board is really just a waste. I don't know. I see the rabbits and the squirrels out in my yard eating blades of grass occasionally, but they're more likely to eat the so-called weeds out there. So I don't like grass. I don't like mowing lawns, but I have a nice fancy lawnmower. I don't have anybody planned for next week because it's a holiday. And a lot of people, even anarchists, are going to be celebrating on the 4th of July because it'll be with family. It's got nothing to do necessarily with the 4th of July. But I'm in a state where you can go and blow things up. You can launch fireworks, real, actual fireworks, things that blow up and things that leave the ground and stuff. They've knocked a few of them off over the years since I've been here, but you can still get the big fancy ones that launch into the air and explode and make a big pretty ball of fire and particles falling all over your neighbor's roof. And yeah, it's lovely. It's a wonderful place to be, and I love to do it. And we'll go out and spend a couple $100 at least, I'm sure, just on some fireworks. Even though they're saying there's a shortage this year, everything's a shortage. Everything you got to run out and get yours faster than everybody else. That's a trick. Don't fall for it necessarily. Okay, yeah. So we'll see you next week then. Until then, take care.